Thelemic Podcast Society worldwide, a global Thelemic podcast with additional shows in German or Polish or Russian or whatever languages active Thelemites speak nowadays. What do you think? Live long and blissful, 93. Well, I think it's a great idea. I would love for people to come out with podcasts in German or Polish or Russian or English or whatever. I would love for there to be more and more podcasts and more media and more ideas and more manifestation of Thelema in the podcast format. I do know that in Europe there is a group of people working to put one together. It's still in the planning stages, and I've been talking to them and very supportive of them and hope that they can get their podcast up and running really soon. I don't want to give any more information, but once they've got it up and running and distributed, I will be more than happy to talk about them on the podcast and point everybody in their direction. The other thing is, if anybody in any other country or wants to do a podcast about Thelema, magic, the occult, or whatever, feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to help you get going and let you know the things that I've learned over the last year. And if there's anything I can do, let me know. We're not in competition. It is actually, the more people participating in this, the better it is for everybody. So I would love for there to be more Thelemic podcasts out there. All right. So let me move on to the next voicemail. This is the last one for this show.
Do it thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, John. This is Scott from California calling, wishing you hearty congratulations on your year of podcasting. And I wanted to read a little poem from Collected Works of Aleister Crowley, Volume 1, for you. It's called Perdurabo. Exile from mankind, the snow's fresh flakes are warmer than men's hearts. My mind is wrought into dark shapes of solitary thought that loves and sympathies, but awakes no answering love or pity. What a pang hath this strange solitude to aggravate the self-abasement and the blows of fate. No snake of hell hath so severe a fang. I am not lower than all men, I feel too keenly, yet my place is not above, though I have this unalterable love in every fiber. I am crucified apart on a long burning crag of steel, tortured, cast out, and yet I shall abide. Love is a law, love under will.
Thank you very, very, very much for the poem, Scott. And I too will endure to the end. So thanks for the well wishes and the poem recitation. The last email is from Nosti. It says, 93, congratulations on the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. I have been a solo practitioner of Thelema for going on 6 years now, and am looking to become a member of an organization, most likely the OTO. And although many people do not appreciate yours and Keith 418's banter on the topics of the problems of the OTO, I do, as it educates us non-initiates to issues we may run into when we do seek initiation. I consider your podcast as invaluable in the insights that it provides to those regards, not to mention the amazing lectures and interviews on Thelemic culture, history, magic that you consistently provide us. Keep up the amazing work. 93. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, there are a lot of positive and negative comments about Keith 418 and I, and that's okay. People are definitely welcome to give their opinions, and we do listen to them, and real good criticism, constructive criticism, we take to heart. So, in fact, I'll be talking about that in a few moments. So, thanks to everybody again for the feedback, both the voicemail, all 6 of them, thanks, and all of the emails that were sent in. I really do appreciate the feedback. It lets me know how I'm doing, and it lets me know what you all like and dislike and so forth. So keep it coming. Again, the easiest way to do it is to call the phone number of 206-600-4216, or you can send me an email, podcast at Thelema Coast to Coast, or go to the Thelema Coast to Coast website and send feedback from there. For those who have microphones on their computer, feel free to record an audio feedback and email it to me too, so I can put all of these together and let people express themselves vocally. Okay, that is our feedback for today. Now, there has been some other feedback and some things that some people have been saying that I want to address. The first one is, one of the consistent messages I've gotten over the last year is that people have noticed that the show has been more about the philosophical or ideological aspects, or even the organizational aspects of Thelema, the OTO, AA, or just manifesting Thelema in the real world, but has been less and less about the actual practical ceremonial magic. And there has been some comments from people saying, why don't you create more shows about that? And I think that's a pretty legitimate criticism, and I want to respond to that. The first thing is, I think that is actually the area that most people concentrate on. If you go and look at what books are out there today about Thelema and magic and so forth, they almost all concentrate on the practical ceremonial magic aspects. Now, this is not a bad thing, but with all of that concentration out there about those subject areas, very few people are looking at the other things like the philosophical or the organizational and so forth. And so people are not really getting a full spectrum of that. And so one of the things that I wanted to do with the show was kind of address those other things, the cultural aspects, the academic aspects, the philosophical aspects that are not really being addressed in the market. That does not mean that the initiation and the ceremonial magic aspects are not important. They are. And some of the shows that we've had on the Goetia and Enochian and so forth have been some of the most popular. I am aware of this criticism. I think it is a valid one, and it is one that I will try to get a little more of the initiatory and the ceremonial magic aspects on it. To that end, I'm going to be talking to Keith 418 about the practical aspects of Liber E. I do hear you. One of the other problems that I have is that there are a lot of beginner practitioners out there, but there are very few people that I can find that can authoritatively talk about these subjects. Unfortunately, there's a lot of dabblers who, if you scratch the surface, they really don't know that much about these things. And so it's really kind of hard to find someone who's got some in-depth knowledge about these things. I mean, think about the Goetic lecture that we heard from Keith 418, or the discussion of Enochian from Lon Duquette. They have a lot of experience in these areas and really can get deep into them and really can answer questions about it. There's not a lot of people who unfortunately can do that. The other thing is, I don't want to be doing shows about like the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram or the Star Ruby, things like that. You can go and pick up any book on ceremonial magic and get that information. So I'm interested in more advanced topics and also exposing the deeper aspects of other rituals. Now, this does not mean that the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram or the Middle Pillar are not important rituals and that they don't have depth in themselves, but they are where everybody starts, and they are something that almost everybody can authoritatively talk about. You don't need to go to a podcast for it. You can go to any your local body or anybody who practices magic. They don't even have to be Thelemites, and they can know about the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. So those are not the things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the more, the deeper aspects, the things that take a lot more time and a lot more practice, and I want to talk to people who can, authoritatively talk about the tarot and the uses of tarot and astrology and talismanic magic and things like that. So if anybody knows of people who are very, very good at these things and who have a lot of background and can demonstrate that they have a lot of background, I would be very interested in talking to them. And feel free to email the podcast at podcast@Thelema Coast to Coast, or go to the website and send some feedback there. To that end, I'd also like suggestions for other guests. As you heard earlier, somebody was talking about one of the AA, or getting somebody on from the AA. I've gotten an email in the past, somebody suggesting that I have Nima on the show, who did Mott Magic, and I have been talking with Nima, and hopefully soon we'll be getting her on the show. So I do get the suggestions, and I do listen to them, and if they seem to fit, I do act on them. So I'm really happy for any kind of suggestions to come in. Also, some of the shows that I've done, I've talked about some magical groups, and also some events going on with local bodies and so forth. Any kind of those announcements, get those to me. I'm more than happy to talk about them. If they have, like the talk that was happening in Japan, I'm more than happy to mention it so people are aware of it. And if it is something larger, like a festival like Babylon Rising, I'm more than happy to get a representative on to talk about the festival or the event, so that people can be aware of it and plan to attend it. So, announcements, guests, suggested topics, I'm really open to all of that. I've got a lot of great ideas, and like the other person was saying, getting off the shores of the coast, I've been talking to some people in Europe and some people in Australia. So I am looking to kind of widen the guest pool and things like that. Unfortunately, there are some logistical aspects to that, but that's something I can work through. So, get the suggestions coming to me and use your imagination on if it has something to do with Thelema, if it's related to occultism, ceremonial magic. Send me the suggestions. I'm very interested in hearing them. Okay, well, now that I've gone on for what seems a quarter of an hour here, let's get into the discussion with Keith. And as I said, Keith and I are talking more about a practical aspect of magic, and in this case, Crowley's Liber E.
Keith, welcome back to the podcast, 93.
Thanks for having me, John.
I've been having a lot of requests from people who say that we're talking a lot about the various OTO and Thelemic group politics, philosophy, and less about more the practical magic material.
Yeah, that's probably a fair critique of the show.
So, to that end, I want to take a look at one of Crowley's AA documents, Liber E, because when people are talking about magic, they often think about things like Liber O, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, or the hexagram rituals, and things like that.
I think it's important to look at the cycle of relationships between Libers E, Libers A, and Libers O. Because if you look at that carefully, you will see that all three of those books spell out EAO and are integrally related to each other in really significant ways. So Liber O is really the culmination of processes that go into Liber E and Liber A. So starting with Liber A makes a lot of sense to me, because that's where the initiation force for the last thing really comes, and then the cycle starts again. Does that make sense?
Right. As I said, though, let's start talking about Liber E first.
Sure.
Since that was the one that I kind of had in mind, and then maybe next time we can talk about Liber A. And as far as Liber O, that one is probably talked about the most. You can pick up any dozen books. The Magic of Aleister Crowley, Donald Michael Craig's Modern Magic.
And maybe your listeners could come up with some actual questions about that book if they want to discuss more.
Okay, that sounds good. So, anybody listening who's got specific questions about Liber O, do send them to us, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. In Liber E, it's broken into sections that I thought are really interesting. What do you think Crowley is trying to do by breaking it up into things like the physical clairvoyance, asana, pranayama, and things like that?
Liber E is one of those amazing Crowley texts that's so basic and so almost primordial that in a certain sense it encapsulates the entirety of the system. I'm sort of reminded of Heidegger's comments about the origin being there in the beginning and also at the end, that the origin, foreshadows the very end as well as just the beginning, that it has an influence on the end of all things. And you can look at Liber E in the same way and see it as encapsulating a tremendous amount of the work. In fact, in a lot of ways, you could see Liber E as really the essential AA text, and that everything else is merely a comment on it.
What do you mean by it's the essential text? Because it tells you, the processes of setting up discipline for yourself?
Yeah. That's all this work really is those sorts of disciplines applied over and over again through various ways. You can either look at that as being the most interesting way of approaching the material or something incredibly limiting, but I think we prefer to look at it as fascinating in both its simplicity and ultimate complexity. It's the seed from which the rest of the system really emerges on a practical basis.
Well, let's take a look at each section. So the first section is talking about the magical diary and recording everything.
There you go. If you don't record anything, you're never going to get very far. It's the most essential part. It's the book. There you go. How